You know, I remember seeing stuff like this on National Geographic. You know, one day the cub sits by watching the mother lioness intensively staring down its prey, and at the prime moment, attacks, devours, and shares her kill with the cub. But a few months later, it's a different situation entirely. The cub routinely follows his mother, just as he had in the past. And in the back of his mind, he's thinking, dinner will be served in a few short minutes. He watches his mother stare down her prey and waits for the opportunity to attack. Finally, she makes her move and begins to run at top speed. As she approaches her victim, she launches into the air on the back of her prey and forces it to the ground. Once on the ground, the lioness cuts the victim's throat with the nails from her claws. And as the lioness begins to devour her kill, the young cub moves in closer and waits for his mother to rip off a healthy portion of meat to share. But to his surprise, the lioness turns on him as if her son were an enemy. And in that moment, the cub realizes he must hunt his own prey if he is to eat again. I can't put it into words, and I'll be real. I'm not real sure how I feel about, you know, the love at first sight concept, but all I know is this, that whenever I walked in the same room with her, I couldn't stop staring at her. It was weird because I didn't visit church with the intent of trying to find someone to date. You know, I was going through a lot at that time in my life, and dating, that was the very last thing on my mind. I was hoping that if I gave it a few weeks, you know, maybe the feelings for her would pass. But something in my gut kept telling me I needed to get to know her. She had such a mature and caring spirit for someone to be so young. It took me a long time to introduce myself to her. I think it had a lot to do with her mom. Her mom, she reminded me of one of those Secret Service men who worked in the White House protecting the president. And in addition to being scared of her mom, you know, I was never the most suave guy when it came to the ladies. I never dated in middle school or in high school. I never had a real relationship. And after the first few weeks of attending church, I knew I had to take a chance. But there was only one problem. I didn't even know if she was dating someone else or not. So I decided to hire Bob as my personal private investigator. You know, my boy's job was to find out as much dirt on her as possible, or should I say, find out every bit of information about her without letting her know that I was digging her. Weeks later, my boy Bob's investigation was complete. He came back and told me, "Good news, E. She's single." I began thinking to myself like, nah, that's not possible. For one, how would he even know I was in Chicago? And more specifically, how would he know I was speaking? And the more I stared at him, the more I realized he was my biological father. And as much as I didn't want to admit it at that time, he looked a lot like me. I froze, and my entire disposition changed. My hands started shaking, my heart started racing, and I started feeling sick to my stomach. I was so taken off guard by him showing up that I was contemplating not speaking, man. I felt like just getting out of the place. I was terrified, and I didn't know what to say to him or how to handle the situation. All I wanted to do was run, get out of that church as fast as I could. I was willing to do anything but face him. And so I ran in the bathroom, and I pretended as though I didn't see him. I stayed there as long as I could before I knew I was next on the program. I must have washed my hands and my face at least 20 times, trying to, regain my composure. I finally got the nerve to come out and speak. And I think I was able to pull off something without anybody knowing I was going through like a real serious crisis. But as soon as I finished speaking, everything went blank. And the feeling of anxiety, it overtook me all over again. I tried everything in my power to get out of that church and pretend as though I never saw him. But it didn't work. Just as I was leaving the sanctuary, I couldn't help it. I couldn't help but to look in his direction, and as soon as I did, we made eye contact. He was standing directly in the middle of the aisle. I tried to stall as long as I could, so I spoke to everybody on my way out until finally, it was just him and I. Him and I in the lobby, and I had no other choice but to face him. All I could remember after that was being so angry that I wanted to strangle him. Next thing I knew, I opened my mouth, I started shaking, and I asked, why? Why? Why did you abandon me? Why didn't you say anything to me all those years? Why didn't you tell me you were my father? I tried so hard not to let the tears roll down as they swelled up in my eyes and protruded beyond my eyelids. I'm sorry, son, your mother told me not to say anything to you. I wanted to be in your life so bad, but out of respect for your mother's wishes, I just kept silent. His response pissed me off even more. And just weeks ago, I stood in the delivery room, blessed to see the birth of my firstborn son, who I love more than life itself. And I couldn't imagine letting my wife or anything else for that matter keep me from my son, from my baby. I couldn't understand why he didn't fight for me. Why didn't he fight to see me? As a father, it just didn't make sense. It just didn't add up.